So, my name is Mustafa. That's me. I've been doing iOS development for almost 8 years now. And I want to talk about how to build iOS apps using less lines of code. But before diving into that topic, I wanted to walk you through my personal experience of how did I become an iOS engineer and like quickly move around those 8 years quickly. So I'm gonna roll back to 2009. I was very excited. I got my first iMac. I'm very excited. So that's my first iMac, and I've been learning iOS development using Apple documentation and some Stanford University online courses and stuff like that. So I wanted so much to try finally building my own app. So I used to develop on an iPhone 3G. Yeah. So I wanted to build my first app. After a year of like learning how to develop iOS apps, I wanted to build my first app. And so I'm originally from Lebanon, and in Lebanon we have a problem in Lebanon where we have electricity outages every day. So electricity goes off, and there's a schedule where how it goes off. And we used to have a manual tracker made from paper, so that every day we change that tracker to know when the electricity will be off on that day. So I decided to build my first app and make this manual tracker an app. So I did that, and that was my first app. It's called Beirut Electricity. And as you see, like it's an ugly design. And it's like very old. You see the old app store. So I built this app, and I didn't consider, like, I thought like maybe I will use it and like a couple of friends, maybe my family will use it, but I didn't imagine that I will upload it to the App Store and the next day will be the #1 app on the Lebanese App Store. It was featured by Apple and reached the #1 app on the Lebanese App Store. 70,000 downloads in the first 3 weeks, and it sustained #1 for 2 months in a row, and that was huge for me. After that, media started calling me. I've been on BBC, online articles, like local television, everywhere, like we were talking about the app and the concept of the app and how it got to be the #1 app on the App Store. BBC World News, BBC Arabic, Reuters, local television, France TV, like all over. So the next is in 2011, I got a phone call from a UK-based company. They wanted to me as join them as an iOS developer. I was maybe the only iOS developer in Lebanon. Lebanon is a very small country. Maybe some of you don't even know that it exists. So I joined this company. I built newspaper and magazines apps for almost 5 years. It was a great team. Now everyone in the team is in a different country, but it was a great team. We built newspaper and magazines apps for 5 years. In that period as well, I got the chance to attend my first WWDC 2012. It was like a dream for me. Like I always watched these sessions and watched the keynote, but being there is like it's totally different experience. I updated the design later on. That's much better for my first app. Yeah, so I added afterwards support as well in 2015. But the newspaper and magazines industry, like it was dying, so this company actually got bankrupt, and I got out of my job. So a friend of mine approached me and said, we are building a startup, we are building a marketplace app. It's called Sadie, and how about you join us and work with us? So I joined Sadie, and it was a great team. We built a marketplace app with just 7 people actually. We built the whole marketplace app. Yeah. So in 2016 as well, I got an email from Apple, and they said like they liked very much the idea of my first app, and they wanted to feature me about in a video in WWDC 2016 about what first inspired developers to start coding. I was very proud to be part of that video. Check it out. You can find it later on. Sadie got bankrupt as well because we couldn't sustain the business. So I joined a development agency company for 1 year. And during that period, I got a phone call from Saudi Arabia. They wanted me to build a huge app. And the budget for that app was very high. So I took the challenge to take that project. This is like the design of the project. And today in my talk, I wanted to show you how I built this app, which is like, as you can see, like it's not a small app, it's like a huge app, a huge newspaper app, in just 28 days, using less lines of code. So I'm gonna show you. This app is actually divided into 4 different kinds of app in one universal app. It's a universal app, so it's iPhone, iPad app, and it's also English Arabic. So you can actually change the language inside the app, and it will switch to different API calls and different actually layout, right to left layout for the app. So you have specific iPad designs. Yeah, huge app. So, and these are like the list of features they want to do like a lot of features. So, 28 working days to build 1 engineer. So, what to do in this case? So, my idea is that I wanted to build an app using a component system. So, I want to build every screen of the app using just an array of enums. So, in this case, every screen is the app. Like, I'll take an example, this screen. So, in this screen, I want to be able to do something like this, like to create an array of different component types and just add them together, append them, and give that to a specific view controller, and that's it. I don't want to do anything else. So, and that's the way I built all the app, basically. So basically, I will start with with how do I define a different component. So for me, like the first, you see this user profile above. This is for me one component. This title is one component, and then this list is one component. So if I want to use this list in like home, I can use it directly. I can use it, and I basically reuse the same component. So, and the idea to build every component, I need basically 2 things. I need the whatever model that needs to build this component. Like for example, this is profile data that contains number of likes, number of comments, followers, username, etc., etc. For this one, I need like the article object contains the title, like date, number of bookmarks, etc., etc. And for this one, it's actually like hard-coded recently bookmarked. So the first thing is that I decided not to write any model files, because if I want to write the model files, the JSON responses of this app, actually there was like around maybe 90 API calls, and different API, each API call actually contains like many, like the JSON was very complicated. So I don't want to write the model files by myself. So I knew this is like sample JSON for this actual screen. You see like you have the username and you have like number of bookmarks, etc., etc. And recently bookmarks is actually an array of articles. So I use Swifty JSON Accelerator. It's a Mac app that you can just paste in the JSON and it will generate your model files basically. So this is my profile data automatically generated using the JSON that I just pasted into the Mac app. The next thing, I want to design the user interface. So I designed this profile as a component that I can use over and over everywhere inside the app. So I just designed it in XID using auto layout and connect objects to that. So that's very basic. The next thing is where the magic happens, is the UI data binding. And in this case, I'm just doing an extension on the model object and just binding the data. I'm passing in the cell with the configure user profile table view cell function, and I'm just binding the data in this case. Self in this case is actually an instance of my profile data. So I just combine the different outlets that I made in the UI table view cell to the main object. And this is how I built the app basically. The components, all the components, I just add one component. In this case, you see this is this is all the components inside the app. I have a multimedia component, I have a medium article collage component, I have a flat channel title component, etc., etc. And in this case, the first one is my profile, user profile, which is another case in that enum. This enum contains different kinds of cases for all different components and an associated object with the data that needs to configure that component. And this is for all the table view cell types, and this is all for the collection view cell types. So some of them are actually table views, and some of them are collection views, and these are for collection views. And the same idea of using enums as well, I made using the endpoints of the app. This is all the endpoints of the app. It's just one enum. So whenever I want to call one endpoint, I just say, I conform to a loading view controller protocol in each view controller, and then I say endpoints.load and specific case from this enum. That's my view controller, user view controller. And as you see, the data source is just an array of enums. So table view cell type, as you've seen before, table view cell type here is just an enum. So the data source is an array of enum, and then I say load endpoints with my profile, it returns the JSON. I parse in just one line of code using Swifty JSON, and then I ask a data source for user table view controller. So the data source is actually taking the data, making an array of enums, and appending everything. As you can see here, so I have an array of items, appending my user profile, that's adding this one. Append channel title, adding this one, and so forth. I'm building this whole thing. Adding spacing, adding different kinds of different components. And this is my profile data, just for reference. And one more thing as well, I use the navigator pattern to handle all the navigation inside the app, so that no view controller will actually handle navigation. And this way, it will be much easier for me to control the whole flow of the app. The old version of this same app, using less features, was built with 67,000 lines of code. My version was only 14,726 lines of code. Yeah, thanks. So, how about we do a demo and to show this in real life? So I'm gonna build a quick app using. I'm gonna do everything I did right now in a very small example, but everything I will do now is actually use the same 100% with the way I built this app.
You're fine.
Yeah, fine. Okay. So, the first thing is that the app I'm going to build is just an app that will call an API request, return JSON, and will populate a table view controller using that. So,
I've made the mistake of trying to code while holding the mic and it did not work out for me.
cool. So the first thing I want to do here is that I'm going to show you the JSON response of the algorithm. I'm just using here a JSON placeholder, and this one will return 5,000 photo items, basically. So this is my JSON. What I will do is that I'm going to go here, copy that JSON, go to Swifty JSON accelerator, and generate my so basically, I'm paste in that here. I'm going to say that this is using Swifty. I'm going to generate a model here. So basically, I generated one file, which is photo, and that's it. I'm going to take that file and go to my. So I'm going to go to models and add this photo object. Okay, great. So I have my photo object. The next thing I want to do is that I want to design my user interface. So I'm gonna go to views and add maybe a photo item thing to view cell.
Lost your screen. I know there you go. Right.
Do you see the code, or I need to increase the size a little bit? It's good. Good.
It might be good to increase the size. There's a presentation mode.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
I'll do that, yeah. So, presentation logs. Presentation logs. Great. So I'm gonna name my cell photo table view cell, or photo item table view cell. That. So my cell is gonna be really simple. I'm gonna add the UI image view and the label. That's it. So I'm actually using auto layout to do the height as well, using automatic height. So add this view and use auto layout. And the label. Okay. So the next thing, I'm gonna just connect outputs for this. Okay, so the next thing is I'm gonna go to my I'm going to do the extension on the model object. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do photo. So I'm extending photo. And I'm going to configure so the way I do it is I just find the data here. So I say cell dot photo title label equals cell dot title and cell dot set dot image view dot photo image view dot load image and it's gonna take these image URL cell dot thumbnail URL. And that's it. That's what I need to do to connect the data with the UI. The next thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go to the enums that I talked about, which is the table view cell types. And I'm gonna add a new case, which is photo item. And this one is associated with object photo model. And in here, I'm just gonna find my reuse identifier. In this case, I'm using photo table USL with class name. And the way to configure it is that using this extension, I say photo.configure. And that's my enum. Photo item. Case for that, yes. So, the last thing I want to do is that I'm gonna do the API call and receive the data. So the first thing, I'm gonna go to the URL of list and get the base URL for this, which is this one. And then I'm gonna go to the endpoints, enum, which is the other enum that I talked about. And I'm going to add a new case, which is a photos list. And this one doesn't need to take any parameters, so I'll just keep it like that. Okay. Photos list, and I'm going to, the path for this one is actually /photos. I'm just going to add the path. I think it's, yeah, photos. And the last thing is that I'm going to go to my data source factory, and I'm going to build this array of enums now, right now. So I'm going to say like static function, data source photos list, and this one will actually take an array of photos, and it will return an array of enums, which is the table you set up. So in this case, it's just gonna do something like this. I'm gonna make an empty array items. Item of photo, item of photo. And that's it. I return the item. So now let's go to the view controller. So first thing is that I'm gonna conform to the loading view controller protocol. So and this one actually calls the function called configure and the JSON. I will do my work here. So the thing is that I'm gonna do load endpoint dot photos list dot endpoint, and I'm gonna get the data here. So this one is actually returning a JSON, directly an array. So excuse me? JSON, yeah. So here I'm going to get say let photos array equal value dot array value dot to compact map media, and we get photo or so I have my photos here. I just say data source equals data source factory dot data source for photos, and now I can build. for us. So this is like 5,000 photos, and basically this data source factory is building the whole app. So basically, once I have the list of all the enum types that I have, I just go in the data source factory and I build things around, I move things around in the array however I want. Very easy, very, very fast. I don't deal with networking, I don't deal with caching. So this one is actually under the hood, it's doing caching as well. I don't deal with writing any model objects, I don't deal with any of that. I just disarm my elements, connect my user interface to that element, and then use it all over. It's just using an array, standard array. So, back to presentation. So you might think that this is okay, very nice, but maybe it could be limited. Like you can't do everything inside of it. So I'm gonna show some of the apps that I built using the same system. So these all apps are built using the same enum type system. So everything in these apps is actually a component that's being populated using an array of enums. And all of these apps are actually available on the App Store and in production mode. This is also the same newspaper app I was talking about. It's also, there's an iPad specific mode as well. And as you can see, even in iPad, you have like the number of items in each section is different in the landscape. You see like the landscape, you have 3 items, and in portrait you have 2 by 2 and 3 by 3 and stuff like that. So this is really powerful. And everything you see here is also doable with the enum system. So I do something like this in the configure. I do like number of items in portrait. I want 2, 3 for phone landscape, 3 for quad landscape, and 4 for quad landscape. And that's the way everything is magically lay out itself. So how I ended up in Mercury, Japan. So this year, actually, I attended TriSwift Tokyo, and I saw this company booth. So, and at the same time, my previous company, Sadie, the startup, they were actually in talks to join Mercury US as well. So they recommended me to apply to Mercury Japan, and I wanted to get this kind of experience working with a company with like so many number of engineers and like large company, and I haven't got the chance to do that, and I thought that it's a great experience for me to move to Japan and work for Mercury. So Sadie joined Mercury US. That's the founder of Sadie. He's in the US right now, and I joined Mercury Tokyo. Yes, it's been 3 months, and that's my journey, that's my story. Thank you for listening.
Any questions?
Yeah, questions? Yeah, sure.
I had a question about how you're actually laying out the components that you're proposing for this enum system.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have an example that you could show us right now, or maybe you could describe it, but like for the first view controls you showed us, where there's the header at the top and then there's the title in the middle, the table view at the bottom. How are you like laying out those components that you propose to put each
Right. So for the example that I showed, actually this whole component is built using one API request. So I do the API request, it returns some data related to the user profile, and returns 2 keys which contain the array of related articles and array of liked articles. So basically once I have this master service object, it contains as a properties an array of articles and all the data needed. So once I have all the data needed, I just go to the data source factory, I provide this data, and I basically loop over this data, or like sometimes it's just I start like, in this example, I know that the first item should be a user profile. So I create this empty array of enums, and I start adding, appending to the array the enum type, and the associated object is actually I'm getting the associated object from the API response. Because the response is actually retaining the data to build this. So basically, yeah. So I Some of them are actually hard-coded, so like the title is like hard-coded. I hard-coded this the way I want, and some of them are like just dynamic. So whatever the array length, we'll just loop over them and we'll add different types of enums.
Okay, so for example, on that page, you have the view controller laid out in maybe a storyboard, and you have all the constraints set. So you have the top header view, and the title view,
Right.
and the table view. It's all hard-coded.
Right.
And then the contents is populated dynamically.
Right. Actually, underneath it's just a table view.
Right.
So what I do is that in the main storyboard, I have a main view controller with a container view, and I just inject a UI table view controller inside of it with a generic UI table view controller that actually takes enum as a data source for it, like array of enum as a data source. And this generic table view controller, in this case, I don't deal with anything like index path or anything like that. I just provide an array of enum and it builds the whole table view. Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that looks great, but how do we try it? Way to download those?
Right. So what I will do is that I'm gonna put everything like the whole system on GitHub. It's not on yet. I'm gonna make it available on GitHub with documentation and everything how to use the whole system, and I'm gonna make it available. And is there a way to post something later on for this? Like I want to post the URL. It's not ready yet, so I'm working on it.
In the comment section of
Yeah.
the meetup is
Yeah.
probably a good place to do that.
Yeah. So please stay tuned for that in the comments section later. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Can I ask, what is your relationship with your clients? By which I mean that, in my experience, when it's possible to develop frameworks that work really well, but occasionally you'll receive specifications from your client that do not easily fit how your framework operates, and whether or not you're able to keep a type of productive framework like this often depends on your ability to tell your client, like, no, you can't do that, or that will take a really long time and may back off, or things like that. So I'm curious, like, in terms of the people who you're developing apps for, what is like the power relationship that you have with them that you can, what can you tell them?
Right. So in my experience, usually like most of the apps that I worked on, they're actually all kind of the same, right? So they all just make an API request, return some data, put them in the list, interact with them like a little bit, but that's it. Like I don't do like kind of apps like I don't do like a browser kind of app or like specific use kind of app. They're all kind of the same. They're like maybe e-commerce apps or like news apps or like stuff like that. So basically they're all the same. That's why I found myself 90% of the time this framework is working very well for me, because like 90, even 95% of all what I do and the requirements for the apps I built actually works very well for this. That's why, yeah. And like this thing that I built, like list of table view controller with caching and everything, usually like takes maybe an Irs Engineer like an hour and a half to do everything. And this is like I did in like maybe 15 minutes or something. And usually this is what gives me the acceleration to build things really fast. And this newspaper app, if you see like the number of components and everything interacting, it's like 90 API requests and everything like that. And this is what was built in 28 days, 14,000 lines of code. 14,000 lines of code, think about it. You can write that in 14 days actually. In 14,000, you can write 1,000 lines of code a day, like for example. So yeah. So I found myself this framework working very well for my situation and the clients that I work with. Maybe it's not for everything, and that's one of the points that I mentioned. Like this is not the ultimate solution for everything, but if you have these kinds of apps, that it works very well.
Like, what would be the exact one target? Like, if your app needs this framework will be perfect.
Right. So if your app like makes an API request, return data, render that data on the screen in a list, and you have different types of things, but there are like different types of components that are reusable all over. So for example, in home, I have the same components reusable in user profile, and reusable in search, and reusable everywhere. So that's, if you have like reusable components, and you have like data, you're showing data, this will work very well. Like you're rendering data out of an API response. This works very well. And especially excels if you have lists, like so many lists. It's like building a list of array of enums is really cool. So yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Sure, go for it.
Great. Sorry, I'll try to speak up. First of all, thanks for preparing a great presentation. The slides were really easy to understand. My question is about on one of your slides and some of your sample apps, you had the scroll down to refresh, which I assume would grab new content from your API. But also in your code, when the data was inflated into your components, it all happened in one place. So I was wondering what happens when this component framework receives new data from the server that may overlap with data that's already presented in your application. How do you reconcile, say, articles that are already presented on the application? Maybe re-rendering everything sounds like a little computationally expensive. So maybe you have some like tagging or caching logic to distill only the new information.
Right. So basically what I do is that when you pull to refresh, you're actually reloading the API, right? You're reloading the API and getting the new data. And once you have the new data, you're asking the data source for a new array of enum. So basically in the generic table view controller, I give it the same array of enum without changing anything. I think underneath the table view controller will not do anything. But if there are new changes, this array of enum is changed, and that's therefore the content on screen is changed, and all of this happens without you noticing like a blink or anything like that. It's just happens, it just updates like normal updates. So, but basically, I'm doing reload data basically on when I get new data, and I need to show that data. Yeah.
Just to clarify, so when you receive the new data, you do recreate, say, all of your components necessary.
Right. Right.
But because you also control the transition to the new data, you know, no matter how long it takes, there's no like jarring effect.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
So it looks like you use like a lot of extensions to implement it, like extensions of your different types and stuff. But how does that work with testing? Because testing you can't like override things implemented with
Right.
extensions.
Right, that's a very good question. And in my case, because I'm building something very fast, I really don't care much about testing. Not that the apps is bad quality or like it's not, testing is not a priority in my case. So that's why this framework works as well, because like this is not tailored for an environment where you have like testing is very important and you have so many engineers that can write so many tests. So that's why in my case, I really don't provide any kind of testing other than user basic testing and QA, basic QA. But yeah, that's why this is not a priority, but I'm sure that if there's a way I can think about a way to incorporate it, this is important, yeah.
Any more questions? Cool. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.